When I saw this email, I thought, are there a lot of those players? After doing some research, I came up with a list, a top 5 of guys who are on bad teams but could contribute to playoff teams if they go and stag them.
You got the buzz, I got the rockets. You got the nuts, I got the chocolates. We got that chit chat down pat, blah blah blah. You got that certain special, je ne sais quoi. Let's go, baby.
It's a bonus edition of Beach Steppin. I'm J.E. Skeets, along with Tass, Trey Kirby, JD on the ones and twos. We're here in the Classic Factory, and we got a great question from a man named Steve. Did Steve email you that perchance? He did, because he's from Melbourne. And Steve Cram wrote in, "G'day, guys.
G'day.
We've seen P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford go from being average NBA players on bad teams to key role players on a finals team. Who's another longtime role player on a bad team whose perception might change with a move to a contender?" Great cue from Steve.
It wasn't a good day. It was a great day. When I saw this email, I thought, are there a lot of those players? After doing some research, I came up with a list, a top 5 of guys who are on bad teams but could contribute to playoff teams if they go and stag them. We got a top 5 for you.
Top 5, top 5, top 5.
Tell me if I'm lying to you. I got 5 of them. Number 5, Collin Sexton of the Utah Jazz. Think of him on the Orlando Magic. They needed a scorer during these playoffs. This guy can score 19 points per game this season on 39% from 3, even better as a starter. 29 points per game on nearly 42% from 3. He's a scorer on a lot of bad teams. 6 years he's been in the NBA, 0 playoff games, but put him on the Magic. I think he could contribute very well. What do you guys think?
I like this. I like that are you giving us the player and the team you want to see him on?
Only when I can think of it.
Okay.
So most of the time. Most of the time that will happen. But I do think Sexton could fit and help out in offense. The good thing about the Magic is they're such a great defense. Sexton just has to be average. Look at P.J. Washington. He's sort of contributing on a team that's understanding how to play defense. You know, he doesn't have to be exceptional, but he has to be damn good. So I think Sexton can be that.
I do like that the Magic defense would kind of make up for Sexton being a small guard. Those guys kind of get targeted come playoff times often. The thing I don't necessarily love, I think part of the reason Collin Sexton's so good for the Jazz is they play 5 out. They got a ton of shooting, so there's a lot of driving lanes. He catches a lot of catch and shoot 3-pointers. That's not happening if he's the Magic point guard. So to me, I love the competitiveness he brings. He would certainly fit in with the Magic there. I think he could be an awesome bench scorer for a team. I don't necessarily know if you want him taking up a ton of possessions if you're trying to win in the playoffs, but I'd love to see Sexton get a chance.
Yeah, they were just so desperate. I feel like this guy can achieve a lot because you're right. They don't have a lot of shooters, but he is making a sort of middle of the pack offensive team thrive this past season. He's on contract for a couple more years. Not a bad option. At number 4, Isaiah Stewart, Beef Stew of the Detroit Pistons. I think OKC could use this guy because they need a guy who can shoot the 3 instead of Josh Giddey. And they need size, obviously, to rebound. He could be the backup center for Chet Holmgren. And I think this would move Jalen Williams down to his proper position. Isaiah Stewart can put it on the floor, kind of like P.J. Washington does. Just hang him in the quarter. He can just camp out there. He can hit shots from there. And he's just a monster. 4 seasons, 0 playoff games on a very, very bad Detroit Pistons
He is
team.
on a bad team. He checks that box for Steve's question there. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see him eventually get on a good team and see him contribute in the right role. OKC's fascinating. The idea that he's added or worked on a 3-point shot. Do you truly, truly believe he's sort of become a consistent 3-point shooter? I think it's TBD. But I like having him on the list here. I like having a big guy for sure.
38% from 3 this season.
Good.
Awesome. 33% his previous 3 seasons. That's not going to cut it.
Right.
But if he's coming off the bench as a small ball 5, I'm down with it. Kind of like a Kelly Olynyk type. Maybe even a Warriors David West if you're feeling crazy.
Ooh, David West. These are guys that you kind of look at your first thought and you're like, they're just not on good teams. Maybe they're just bad. But then you kind of sit back and you say, we said similar stuff about P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford mere months ago when they were traded. So it just kind of fit right. We'll see if Beef Stew could do that.
The part of the equation, too, when you're on bad teams, nobody watches you. nobody even knows half the time if you're any good because nobody's watching your crappy team play. I'm talking about, people that try and watch a lot of games, got League Pass fired up. That's a part of it.
Yeah,
and then
right.
you get him on a good team. You're like, oh, he's got something. You're like, yeah, he did, but it's sort of just being wasted on a bad squad.
You're right. Making this list made me watch lots of highlights from these guys.
Right.
Some highlights that I'd never seen before.
You ever watch the lowlights, though? Did you watch the lowlights? Because with a guy like Isaiah Stewart, I'm like, he probably can't play the 4. That's the thing with PJ Washington. He's way more mobile than Isaiah Stewart is. Stewart is a 5. He's just a shorter 5, but that would be an okay guy if he's a small ball dude.
Yeah, you're right. There are lowlights of him at the 4. But he can put it on the floor a little bit. I think with a team that provides enough space for him to put it on the floor, like PJ Washington in a way, I thought that exact same thing. Can he put it on the floor and give you a little hook shot like PJ Washington did during this postseason? He can. The guy can score, and he's a smart basketball player. 3 more years at about $15 million on his contract. That's what he earns. All right, number 3, Gary Trent Jr. This is an interesting one because he is a free agent technically with the Toronto Raptors right now. We know the guy can score. The guy gets buckets. He is very, very good at that. This was his best defensive year as well. He took on the role of trying to guard the other team's best players a lot on the perimeter. He was better. He is more of a machine scorer than a defender, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. Orlando obviously would work for him on that side. Maybe the Milwaukee Bucks. Maybe. At 25 years old, what do you guys think of Gary Trent? 6 years and a couple playoff series under his belt.
Oh, he's got some experience.
He has a little.
11 playoff games.
Some Blazers, not many, but his younger days with the Blazers.
Yeah. He's more of an interesting one because I feel like, look, he's a scoring machine. This guy, I've seen it firsthand being a Raptors fan. He can catch fire, and he will have those games where he's hitting 6, 7, 8 threes. That can be a difference maker on a team with more talent. I think put in the right spot. Yeah, defensively, he sort of generates a lot of steals. I sometimes look at him, I wonder if he is a really good defender. He takes risks and stuff like that, but he is active. I got no issue with him being on the list. He sort of surprised me how young he still is. He feels like he's been around a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
So he has still a long career ahead of him. Yeah. I will not be surprised if, as his career goes on, he finds himself on a good team where he just plays a small part and is instrumental to their success. So that makes some sense.
How many times at the trade deadline are we like, this guy could win you a quarter in a playoff game? Right. That's absolutely what Gary Trent Jr. could do. 37 to 40% from 3. He'll shoot it every time he touches it. That's great. It's mostly catch and shoot stuff from Gary Trent Jr., so he needs a setup man. He's kind of like a Malik Beasley. Beasley had some moments during the regular season for the Bucks, fell out of the rotation for Milwaukee eventually, but if you've got enough defenders to be able to cover for a smaller dude in Gary Trent Jr., you're willing to live with it because of his shooting.
You're right about the quarter thing. I could see some Walker, a little Lonnie Walker in him, just a little bit. He won a quarter for the Lakers. That would make sense. Mm-hmm. Interesting to see where he'll go with free agency this year. How much do people pay this guy who's been around for 6 years, as you said? He's only 25. It's not old.
No.
So he's probably...
Hasn't even his prime yet.
Yeah, he's probably entering his prime here. At number 2, we got Ayo Dosunmu with the Chicago Bulls. Speaking of young guys, at first I had him on the list and I thought, he's only been in the league for 3 seasons. Right. I think it's too short for Steve Cram's email, but Trey mentioned him. And I totally agree. This guy is the guy you want to defend the other team's best player. And he can shoot the 3. We'll play his heart out, Trey.
Yeah, he's another if he can really shoot guy for me. 40% from 3 this season, more confidence than he's ever shot the ball with. But 37 his rookie year, 31 his second year. Very up and down. Who knows if it actually translates. That being said, the defense is going to be there and the speed is going to be there. He could be your TJ McConnell for a lot of teams. Come in, push the pace, give great defensive effort, and then hopefully be able to score as well.
Yeah. I think it's the kind of guard that every team wants, really. It's like, wouldn't the Lakers want this guy? Of course they would. And yeah, he's only been in the year 3 years, been in the league, 3 years, 1 playoff series under his belt. It was fun with the Chicago Bulls while it lasted, but it makes sense for Steve Cram here because these teams are bad.
Well, these 2 guys contributing to the Mavericks right now that, inspired this email, they had very, very little playoff experience. I think Gafford only played in 1 series. He played 5 games. PJ Washington never sniffed the playoffs. So, a lot of these guys on this list you have, it makes sense. You're like either 1 sort of like playoff series, maybe 2 in Gary Trent Jr.'s case, or 0. You never even seen him with the bright lights of the postseason. So,
wrapping up our top 5. It's Deni Avdija at number 1 of the Washington Wizards. Because this guy's a modern player. He's a 6'9" wing who defends the other team's best player. This season, he got better on the offensive end. 14.7 points per game, 7.2 boards, 3.8 assists on great percentages. He took a third of his shots at the rim. I was surprised by that. He devoted himself to making himself a better player and getting to the rim. He even got most improved player votes this season. He was 6th. So he's so good. Nice. A playoff team should buy now. And you might say, oh, this guy just got his extension from the Washington Wizards. They want him. Sure. But he's on a stinky team, and sometimes stinky teams got to give up these guys. And he's been in the league 4 years, like Gafford and PJ. They've been around. And then sometimes your bad team just has to say, okay, we've got to cut the cord on this guy. They're going to keep him around for a while. He's just that good. Like PJ's got a descending contract, so the contract is good. I think the Cavs would want him. I think OKC would want him. Yeah. I think even the Phoenix Suns would love this guy because he can break down a defense as a secondary option. There's no doubt about that in my mind. He's good, and that's why he's number 1.
If he's a 37% three-point shooter, he's awesome because he was basically 30% the first 3 seasons of his career before finding his shot this season for Washington. But he's a great transition player. He's got good size. He rebounds okay. He can pass the ball a little bit. There have been multiple guys that we've seen in this playoffs who play very similar to Deni Avdija. Derek Jones Jr., Josh Green from the Mavericks. You can go further back and say James Posey for the Celtics if you wanted to. But Washington absolutely should not give up on this guy because he's the only player they have that plays both sides of the ball.
That's a great point. But I like including him on this list. I was hoping you sort of have a defensive-minded guy because I think more times than not, when you look back at the past champions, there's usually a guy that they got the year prior, either in a trade, either in a signing. I'm thinking like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for the Nuggets, PJ Tucker for the Bucks when they brought him in, even Marc Gasol when the Raptors trade for him. A defensive guy that can't be a liability offensively. He's got to be able to score, which you said there, TK. He sort of has showed at least in this last season. Can he continue to work on that? These are the guys that are the difference makers for good teams. Like they sort of take them to the next level. So I could see Avdija being that, but the Zards should keep him.
They should.
He's very
you need at least one guy who plays defense.
Yes. So there it is. Top 5.
Done and done. He is the 3rd highest paid player for the Washington Wizards. That's just a bad sign. I mean, the most likely they're just gonna be a bad team for a long time. So it just feels that way. So eventually they're just gonna say, okay, we're getting an offer for a late 1st round pick for Deni Avdija. Guess we got to take it because our team stinks and we got to get better. So that's where it might fit. But yeah, he's proven to be a good NBA player thus far.
All right, so Tass's top 5 there: Collin Sexton, Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart, Gary Trent Jr., Ayo Dosunmu, and Deni Avdija with the Zards. Who did Tass miss? Let us know in the comments. Which other players on bad teams could you see contributing sort of down the line to a contender? Let us know, and keep the emails coming. NoDunks@theathletic.com. Tweet them in @NoDunksInc, or drop them in the comments. See you soon.